ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of China 101. It has been a few weeks since we last met with each other. There has been many internal restructuring within our organization, so China 101 was paused for a few weeks, but we never disappear. And this time again, and this time around, we once again came back to YouTube and meet with our audience once again. Now, as the U.S. election is in turmoil, there's a lot of debate on what a chaotic United States is going to affect China, and a lot of people are wondering: is a chaotic United States is going to give China the opportunity to become more aggressive and swallow more territories around China? For example, the disputed area between China and India, further crackdown on Hong Kong, or potentially a hot war between China mainland and the self-governing province of Taiwan. Now, in this episode, we want to explore from a military perspective: is China actually a paper tiger? This topic has been discussed over and over again because a lot of people believe that China's military is actually a rapidly modernizing and expanding force on the planet, and it is at this stage, China's military is definitely a terrifying force to be reckoned with. But however, there are also other people that think that China's military is actually a paper tiger because they don't possess a lot of the key technology, such as making a quality fighter jet engine or making semiconductors, which are used everywhere from a tank to a bomber. Now, let's us discuss: is China actually a paper tiger from a military perspective? As the tension continues to rise between the United States and China, many now predict it is inevitable that the United States and China will head to a conflict, especially as United States election went into a chaos situation. China might have the advantage to have the first strike. Just like in the early 20th century, when Germany, a rising economic power in Europe, wanted to challenge the dominant powers such as Britain and France and take their place as the new leader of the West, it inevitably led us to World War I and World War II. But at the same time, many people believe that if the US and China get into a hot war, the US will have the overwhelming advantage because China is a paper tiger. So, is China actually a paper tiger? Let's find out. Number one, actual military strength. China does currently have the largest standing army on the planet, with over 1.5 million standing personnel with relatively modern equipment. So it is definitely not a force to be reckoned with. China also have the world's largest air force with 5,800 military aircrafts, while the United States have 5,080 aircrafts. In addition, China also have the world's largest navy with 580 total ships, while the US have 480 total ships. So on paper, it appears that China is a very powerful adversary. But we all know that number is not everything. There are many battles in human history which smaller armies trumped their larger counterparts. When looking at pure stats, one thing that gets ignored often is experience. In terms of experience, the Chinese military is lacking big time. China has not fought any large-scale war since the Korean War from 1950 to 1953. Even back then, China received massive assistance from the USSR, which was common knowledge that almost all of the air battles that were fought in the Korean War was between Soviet pilots instead of the Chinese pilots. The US, on the other hand, has never stopped fighting wars. World War I and World War II aside, we all know that during the Korean War, the US made up approximately 85% of the Allied army. And after Korean War, within merely 10 years, the US was once again involved in the Vietnam War, then into the height of the Cold War during the early to late 70s, when America and the USSR were carrying out proxy wars against each other all around the world. After the collapse of the USSR, the US continued to get involved in wars and on foreign turfs, Gulf War in the 90s, and getting heavily involved in the Yugoslav wars. When we enter the millennia, once again, the United States started full-scale war in Afghanistan and Iraq. Therefore, it is not hard to see in terms of actual war or skirmish experience, the Chinese army doesn't even come close. Having a stealth fighter in your military arsenal is one thing, but knowing how to use a stealth fighter to its maximum capacity is a whole new story. Number 2, soft power. It is true that wars are won with bullets, but we must not forget where the bullets come from. Great Britain was able to survive World War II and eventually forced the Nazis to abandon their Britain invasion plan because the UK had a powerful ally like the United States, who was giving UK constant supplies around the clock. Without raw materials from the United States, the United Kingdom would have been conquered. In addition, in later years of World War II, Nazi Germany was almost fighting half of the planet. Britain and all of her colonies, Canada, Australia, France, and the USSR, are all working towards to take down Adolf Hitler. Today, there is no doubt that the United States has the world's largest standing alliance, NATO. All NATO members are required to join a war if one of their members was attacked or a war is triggered with one of its members. Other than NATO, the US also have strong military alliance with powerful Asian countries such as Japan, Korea, and the Philippines. And in October 2020, the US officials started working on the Pacific Rim, NATO, with Japan, India, and Australia. China, however, has no military alliance. Even China's so-called close friend, Russia, never signed any form of military alliance treaty with China. Therefore, if China gets into any form of conflicts with the United States, no country on earth is bound by any forms of treaties to fight on China's behalf. As a result, if a skirmish breaks out between China and the United States, it would be most likely be a one versus many scenarios, and China will no doubt lose facing an overwhelming force. In conclusion, China's military are relatively well equipped, but it certainly lacks in experience and it is soft power to form necessary alliance when wars break out, and when wars break out also put the Chinese military in a significant disadvantage. As President Eisenhower once said, if you have to fight a war, never fight a war for long, never fight a war alone, and most importantly, never fight a war which you cannot win. But we will only get our answer when a war truly breaks out. And I sincerely hope we can avoid a war because we can all agree getting a lot of people killed is never a good thing. And that is the end of my presentation, and now I'm open for questions.
Hey Mandarin, I have a question. So, how ready do you think China is ready for war or ready for the preparation of war?
That is a really good question. So when we talk about readiness, there are two things that affect the readiness of an army. First of all, is how well trained are your armies? For example, the Chinese army, even though they lost a lot of men in Korean War, they actually put up a good fight they actually put up a good fight against the Allied army, which is why at the end of the day, the Korean War ended once again on the 38th parallel, because the reason why the Chinese army were effective because they were involved in the Japanese invasion war, and then after Japan was defeated, they are also in a 5-year war between the Communist Party and the Kuomintang Party. So the Chinese army are really, really well trained and experienced. So from an experience standpoint, the Chinese army right before Korean War are well trained, experienced, so they were ready. And also another thing that we need to consider the war readiness is how much supplies you have for your army. Can your country produce a lot of food? Can your country produce a lot of tanks? Can your country produce a lot of jet fighters? We all know that the capacity for China to produce food is a big problem because the Chinese population heavily relies on imported food. They rely on imported agriculture. So, for example, if China wants to invade Taiwan, China needs to make sure that the Chinese army have enough food supply so the soldiers have something to eat. However, the international community can also sanction China pretty easily by cutting off China's food supply. So from a military supply standpoint, I think it's gonna take a lot more for China to get ready. But however, we also need to remember we are more than 50 years away from the Korean War, and within this 50 years of time span, the Chinese army never fight any wars. So at this point, if China wants to invade Taiwan, or China wants to invade other country like Vietnam, or they have a conflict with India, I don't think the Chinese army is ready because they lack supplies, and they don't have any real and they lack real world fighting experience.
Okay, can I have a follow-up question?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so as you said, the prerequisite for a developing military and a more advanced military status would be having a stable economy and having enough food for the people to like develop in society to be willing to put more effort into the military. But do you think, or is it a matter of fact that the Chinese government would rather like take risky advantage of or benefits of their own people for just developing or like be more advanced in military? Like my people, like for example, if I'm the Chinese government, will I be willing to let my people suffer rather for the benefits in military advancements?
I think that is a really good question, and I think it is really likely to happen because for any dictatorship, their number one priority is not the happiness of the citizens or the growth of economy. For a dictatorship government, their number one priority is always to save the party. So it's pretty much like the Soviet Union. To prevent the Soviet Communist Party from collapsing, they need a huge army to protect themselves. And the Chinese Communist Army the Chinese Communist is no different. The army is there to protect the party. The army is not there to protect its people. So if the Chinese Communist Party they feel like they are under threat from an outside force, they will for sure dump a lot of money into military development or military recruitment, and let the common people suffer. And that is definitely possible. And I think that is something that will happen.
Okay, so as we have seen currently in the Chinese government and in their press conferences or whatever, they seem to be like not fearing war, like supposedly not fearing war, but they, as you said, like that's not something you said, but as I assume, Chinese government is like should know like how bad they are with military and like how weak they are. Why do you think they still like present that way to the outside world? Do they think like they can scare off Western countries, or do you think their way of acting to the outside world would actually be effective?
So the main reason why the Chinese government said that they're gonna declare war on Taiwan all the time, it's not because they really want to attack Taiwan. It's because when you said that you want to fight somebody, it helps you to unite your people. Let me give you a really good example. So in the Middle East, there's a place called Palestine. Palestine is right next to Israel. Palestine pretty much has no standing army. Israel has one of the strongest military in the Middle East. But if you look at the Palestine government, what they do day in and day out is that they want to they're gonna wage a sacred war and pretty much wipe Israel from the map. They have been saying that for the past 50 years. But they could never master enough force to form a large enough army to invade Israel and wipe Israel off the map. But however, they say that all the time because it is really important to have a common enemy for your country. And once you have a common enemy, it is very easy to unite all of those citizens under your control. This is why North Korea. Another great example is North Korea. Kim Jong-un will never possess enough military strength to take out the United States. But when you go to North Korea and see those North Korean propaganda on North Korean TVs, they are saying that North Korea will nuke USA. North Korea will wipe out USA day in and day out. And the reason why they're doing that is nothing else but to establish a common enemy. So it is easier for the Kim family to put the North Korean people under his dictatorial control.
Okay, I do have a question.
Yes.
My question is, right now in US is such a turmoil because all the fake news and medias, they project that Joe Biden is the elected president. But do you think if Joe Biden become the president of the United States, that US and China will have a war in the future?
No. If Joe Biden becomes the president of the United States, there's no way that the United States and China will have a war. And the answer is really simple because Joe Biden because when you look at Joe Biden, we know who Joe Biden represents. Joe Biden represents globalists. And when you look at these globalists, who are the biggest benefit? Why are the globalists so rich in the past? Get so much richer in the past 30 years? It's because they exploit China as a slave factory. All of these globalists, they exploit China as a slave factory, and that's how they can make so much profits on their products. So two kinds of entities benefited from globalism. China and all of the Fortune 500 companies, they benefited from globalism. And Joe Biden is pretty much the representative of this globalist power. So if Joe Biden go back to becoming the power, I think the first thing the first thing he will do is get rid of all of the tariffs that Trump put in place, and then he will probably get United States into more free trade with quotation mark, new free trade deals with China, new free trade deals with Mexico, new free trade deal with Canada, new free trade deal with pretty much with everybody on the planet, to however they can benefit the globalists. So no, if Biden comes into power, there's not going to be any war between the United States and China. I don't think that's possible.
Even though the U.S. and China is not going to the war, if the Joe Biden is being selected as the president, I talk about legally selected, okay? But even though there's no war possibly between the U.S. and China, but what I'm trying to say is the Hong Kong and maybe possibly Taiwan will in a great danger, because if the Joe Biden is in the place that he is not going to help people in those two places to fight for their freedom. Would you agree?
Yes, I definitely agree because the persecution of Tibetans and the Uyghurs in Xinjiang didn't really happen under Trump. It already happened under Barack Obama's time. I mean, especially the suppression of Tibetans. That happened even before Obama. That happened during the George W. Bush time. And we can all see, we are all old enough to remember, neither the Bush administration and the Obama administration did anything to help the Uyghurs and the Tibetans, and also we can see that Joe Biden, he never, when he was running for the 2020 election campaign, he never once mentioned the suppression of Uyghurs or the suppression of Hong Kongers. So we can pretty much. It's pretty much guaranteed that if Joe Biden goes into the office, he's not going to do anything. He's not going to stop China from doing anything from suppressing the Uyghurs and the Tibetans and the Hong Kongers, and in the future probably the people of Taiwan.
So, but if the Donald J. Trump, if he could be in the House again, let's say in January or in December, then all we talk about, those human rights, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Uyghurs, Tibetans, those are the people that Trump is supporting and he is also fighting for. So if he in the House in the future, I'm just saying if the Donald Trump back to the White House, then basically you believe there is a war going on with China and the US. Is that correct?
I actually don't believe there's gonna be a war between China and the U.S. because the Donald Trump he is elected by the people of the United States, so his number one duty is still America first. But if Trump is elected, I think the how should I say, like, the situation is gonna be a lot harder for China. Because before the election, what we can see clearly is that Trump is using an isolation tactic. He sent the minister of health to Taiwan, and then immediately 1 month later he sent the under state secretary, what is his name again, Kiev something. He sent him to Taiwan again. So what is that telling me? That is telling me that the White House is ready to establish relationship with Taiwan. I mean, formal diplomatic relationship with Taiwan. Once that is done, it's not going to declare war on China. It's going to isolate China from the international stage. And once China is further isolated from the international stage, it's going to be a lot harder for the Chinese government to make money. And money is and money is key for the CCP's propaganda machine, because China spent more money on propaganda than its military. It's really interesting. China spent more money on mind controlling people than its military, than the military itself. So if China is further isolated from the international stage, which means it's going to be harder for China to make money, they won't have enough money to do propagandas anymore. And once the propaganda machine stops running, that's when the Chinese people will start getting awake. We'll start seeing the truth. And I think if that day comes, if that day comes, the Xinjiang concentration camp, the suppression of Hong Kongers, the suppression of Tibetans will actually end itself.
I see. Hey, Simon, do you have more questions to ask?
Well, I'm fine today. I've learned a lot. Thank you very much for all of you guys, including the questions and also the content. Thank you. And hopefully our audience could learn as well.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end for today's episode of China 101. Please don't forget to click the like button, subscribe, and click the bell so you know the next time we upload a video. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to comment in the comment section down below. And if we find your question worthy, we might address them in the next episode. So see you guys next time. Bye bye.